On the night of November 12th, 2021, two young women set out to enjoy what should have been an unforgettable evening in Los Angeles. One was a rising fashion model. The other was a talented architect chasing her dream career in America. By sunrise, both women would be fighting for their lives. They were found abandoned outside two different hospitals by masked men driving a black Toyota Prius with no license plates. The men refused to identify themselves. They disappeared before police could question them. At first, investigators believed they were looking at another tragic drug overdose. But as surveillance footage surfaced, text messages were recovered, and detectives uncovered disturbing evidence. The case transformed into one of the most shocking criminal investigations in recent Los Angeles history. This is the case of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabrales. Before tragedy struck, both women were building promising futures. 24-year-old Christy Giles had moved from Alabama to Los Angeles to pursue a career in modeling. Friends described her as adventurous, energetic, and full of life. She had recently married South African artist Jan Cilliers, and together, they dreamed of building a future in California. Her close friend, 26-year-old Hilda Marcela Cabrales, had recently arrived from Mexico. A talented architect, Hilda had accepted a new position in Los Angeles and was excited to begin the next chapter of her life. The two women quickly became close friends. On the evening of November 12th, they planned what seemed like a normal girls' night out. They first visited Soho House before heading to a warehouse party, where music echoed late into the night. Nothing about the evening suggested that it would end in tragedy. As the hours passed, Christy and Hilda met several men at the party. According to investigators, those men included David Pearce, his roommate Brant Osborne, and another acquaintance. Witnesses later told police the group appeared friendly. There were drinks. There was conversation. Eventually, the women agreed to continue the night at Pearce's apartment on West Olympic Boulevard. It would be the last place they were ever seen alive. Around 5:30 that morning, Christy sent one final text message to Hilda. It contained only 2 words. "Let's go," Hilda immediately replied. "I'll call an Uber. 10 minutes away." The exchange suggested something important. Despite being inside the same apartment, the two friends were texting each other instead of speaking face-to-face. For investigators, that detail would later become deeply significant. Records showed the Uber driver arrived exactly as requested. The driver waited several minutes outside the apartment. No one came out. After waiting, the driver canceled the ride and left. Neither Christy nor Hilda ever sent another message. Hours later, surveillance cameras captured a disturbing scene outside Southern California Hospital. A black Toyota Prius pulled into the emergency entrance. 2 men wearing baseball caps and face coverings stepped out. Instead of rushing inside for help, they quietly removed an unconscious woman from the vehicle and placed her on a stretcher. Hospital staff immediately noticed something unusual. The men refused to give their names. They claimed they had simply found the woman unconscious. Then they drove away before officers could arrive. The woman was Christy Giles. Doctors worked desperately to save her. But it was already too late. She was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Just 2 hours later, the very same Prius appeared outside another hospital nearly 12 miles away. Again, 2 masked men carried an unconscious woman from the vehicle. This time, the victim was Hilda Marcela Cabrales. Unlike Christy, Hilda was still alive. She was rushed into intensive care, where doctors fought to save her life. As detectives reviewed the two hospital incidents, one question became impossible to ignore. Why would anyone leave two unconscious women at separate hospitals instead of calling 911? And why were the men so determined to hide their identities? Those questions would soon lead investigators toward a suspect whose past contained a disturbing pattern of allegations. And the evidence waiting inside his apartment would change the investigation forever. As investigators began piecing together the timeline, the case quickly became far more complicated than a suspected overdose. Detectives obtained surveillance footage from nearby businesses, traffic cameras, and both hospitals. The recordings confirmed that the same black Toyota Prius had transported both women. Even more suspicious, the vehicle had no license plates. Whoever was inside appeared determined to avoid being identified. Lead detectives traced Christy's cell phone activity during her final hours. Location data led them directly to an apartment building on West Olympic Boulevard. It was the same address where David Pearce lived with his roommate, Brant Osborne. When detectives first questioned the men, their stories immediately raised red flags. According to investigators, Pearce initially denied that Christy or Hilda had ever been inside his apartment. Osborne reportedly made similar claims, but surveillance footage told a different story. Cameras captured the women entering the apartment with the group during the early morning hours. Confronted with the evidence, the men's accounts began to change. Investigators later said the explanations shifted repeatedly, making it increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction. Detectives eventually searched the apartment. Inside, they discovered signs that someone had recently tried to clean the residence. Beds appeared to have been stripped. A washing machine had been recently used. Investigators also recovered plastic baggies and other items they believed could be connected to narcotics. Although none of those discoveries alone proved murder, detectives believed they painted a troubling picture. The investigation became even more alarming after toxicology reports were completed. Christy's autopsy revealed multiple drugs in her system, including cocaine, fentanyl, ketamine, and GHB, a powerful sedative often associated with drug-facilitated sexual assaults. The combination was potentially deadly. Hilda's toxicology report also showed cocaine, MDMA, elevated levels of fentanyl, and other substances. Medical experts concluded that both women had suffered severe drug intoxication. But investigators now faced a critical question. Had the women taken those drugs willingly? Or had someone secretly given them dangerous substances without their knowledge? As detectives searched for answers, Christy's husband, Jan Cilliers, began conducting his own investigation. He carefully reviewed her phone records, text messages, and digital activity from that night. One detail immediately stood out: the final text exchange between Christy and Hilda. "Let's go. I'll call an Uber." To John, those messages suggested the women wanted to leave the apartment, but they never made it outside. Instead, the Uber driver waited several minutes before leaving without passengers. For investigators, that failed ride became one of the most important moments in the timeline. Something had happened inside the apartment during those final minutes. Meanwhile, detectives dug into David Pearce's background. What they uncovered was deeply disturbing. Years before Christy and Hilda's deaths, several women had accused Pearce of drugging and sexually assaulting them. Some described accepting drinks before suddenly losing consciousness. Others reported waking up with little memory of what had happened. Although previous cases had not resulted in convictions, Investigators believed the allegations revealed a strikingly similar pattern. Prosecutors would later argue that Pearce deliberately targeted women, supplied them with drugs, incapacitated them, and then sexually assaulted them while they were unable to defend themselves. As the evidence mounted, detectives believed they finally understood what had happened inside the apartment. But proving it beyond a reasonable doubt would require far more than suspicion. They needed witnesses, they needed forensic evidence, and they needed someone from inside that apartment to tell the truth. That breakthrough would come from an unexpected source. A man who had been inside the apartment that night would eventually speak with investigators. His account would dramatically strengthen the prosecution's case and lead detectives one step closer to arresting the men they believed were responsible. The breakthrough detectives had been waiting for finally arrived. A man who had been inside David Pearce's apartment that night agreed to speak with investigators. His name was Michael Ansbach. According to prosecutors, Ansbach described a night that quickly spiraled out of control. He told detectives that Pearce had invited Christy and Hilda back to the apartment after the warehouse party. The group talked, listened to music, and continued drinking. At one point, Pearce allegedly offered everyone what he described as special cocaine. Within minutes, Ansbach said something felt terribly wrong. He became violently ill and eventually lost consciousness himself. When he woke up hours later, the apartment was silent. Christy was lying motionless. Hilda appeared barely responsive. According to investigators, Ansbach later claimed Pearce repeatedly refused to call 911. Instead, Pearce allegedly told him words prosecutors would later repeat throughout the trial. "Dead girls don't talk." To investigators, that statement revealed a chilling state of mind. Rather than seeking emergency medical care immediately, prosecutors argued that valuable hours were lost while the victims remained inside the apartment. Evidence later showed that more than 11 hours passed between the women's final text messages and the moment they were finally taken to hospitals. By then, Christy was beyond saving. Hilda remained on life support for nearly 2 weeks before she also died from the effects of severe drug intoxication. As detectives continued building their case, they uncovered even more evidence. DNA collected during the investigation supported allegations that Christy had been sexually assaulted. Medical examinations also documented injuries consistent with sexual violence. Meanwhile, prosecutors appealed publicly for other possible victims to come forward. The response was overwhelming. Over the following months, numerous women contacted investigators. Several described remarkably similar encounters with David Pearce. They alleged that after accepting drinks from him, they became suddenly disoriented, blacked out, or lost large portions of their memory. Some accused Pearce of sexually assaulting them while they were unconscious. Although each allegation involved different circumstances, prosecutors argued they demonstrated a consistent pattern of behavior stretching back years. In December 2021, David Pearce, Brant Osborne, and Michael Ansbach were arrested. As the investigation continued, Ansbach agreed to cooperate with authorities. His cooperation became a significant part of the prosecution's case. Pearce, however, denied intentionally harming anyone. His attorneys argued that Christy and Hilda had voluntarily consumed drugs during the evening. The defense maintained there was no evidence proving Pearce deliberately poisoned the women or intended for them to die. Brant Osborne also denied knowingly participating in any murder or assault. The legal battle would continue for years. When the trial finally began, Prosecutors presented surveillance footage, forensic evidence, cell phone records, toxicology reports, and testimony from investigators, medical experts, and multiple women who described similar experiences involving Pearce. The prosecution argued that the evidence established a disturbing pattern. Women were allegedly lured to Pearce's apartment, given intoxicating substances, sexually assaulted while incapacitated, and abandoned instead of receiving immediate medical care. The defense challenged that theory, insisting the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence and witness testimony that should be viewed with caution. After weeks of testimony, the case was finally placed in the hands of the jury. Following deliberations, jurors found David Pearce guilty of the murders of Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabrales, along with multiple counts of sexual assault involving other victims. For the families, the verdict marked the end of a painful journey that had begun with unanswered questions outside 2 Los Angeles hospitals. Although no verdict could bring Christy or Hilda back, their loved ones said justice had finally been served. The case remains a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly trust can turn into tragedy. 2 young women left home expecting nothing more than a night with friends. Instead, their final hours became the center of one of Los Angeles's most disturbing criminal cases. Their story changed lives, inspired other survivors to come forward, and exposed a pattern investigators say had remained hidden for years. If you enjoyed this true crime documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real crime stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, every crime has a motive.